question to Coach Bateman, please raise your hand and we will begin. First off with CL Brown. CL, unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Hi, Coach. I was wondering, I kind of feel like a lot has been made about the linebackers in secondary, but we haven't heard a ton of the guys up front. So I just wanted to ask you about specifically nose tackle and the other defensive tackle, like who's kind of stepping to the forefront of claiming those positions.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the season last year, we felt like Ray was playing at a really high level. He was playing a lot of snaps and that's continued. He was probably the guy I was most worried about with not having spring practice, just because I felt like he really kind of improved. And I thought if we could have got him for another 15 or practice, whatever, but he's done a great job with Brian Hess. I feel like he's a guy that can play a lot of football for us. Jaleel Taylor's playing, with him at nose guard and doing a really good job. And then I think, we're getting Miles Murphy, a freshman, who's a big, really talented kid in there, some reps. I'm excited to see Miles continue. Tim Cross is doing a good job with him. And I think at tackle, I'm not sure the best player in our defense is Tamari Fox. So, that's primarily where he's playing. We move him around. We don't want people to really know where he is, but that's where he's playing primarily. Zach Gill's really improved. I think Zach's kind of figured out how to use the body God gave him. He's a big, long kid, and he's using that, and I really feel strongly about him, the improvement he's made. And then, Jaleel goes back and forth there some too, so I feel like those are kind of the 5 kids that are going to play the most. And I think that's a pretty good group, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And you last year, it seemed like at times you played, you played with one defensive end, two D tackles, but Strawbridge was so versatile. Is that kind of what you're seeing, what you're kind of planning for Fox, like to
yeah.
Almost adapt what Strawbridge did?
Jason was a 5th-round draft pick, right? So he's a pretty talented kid. So part of the deal with Jason last year was so they couldn't always know where he was. Right? It was like, hey, if he's always in the boundary, that's blocked that way. So that was part of it with Jason. But yeah, Tamari is going to be in a very similar role when we are in some of those packages for sure.
Thanks, Coach.
Okay, let's move over to Greg Barnes. Greg, go ahead.
Hey, Jay. Hope you're doing well. Mac has really praised the secondary as a strength, and I was kind of wanting to get your take on how the secondary has fared and what impresses you about that bunch.
Yeah, so I think we got some young kids that have played, kind of unique roles, right? Cam Kelly comes out, starts against Clemson, plays really good, tears his ACL. So you say, well, gosh, he only played one game. But, he prepared, for 2 or 3 weeks like a starter, started against, the number 1 team or number 2 team in the country, whatever they were at the time. So Cam Kelly's done a really good job in the offseason of kind of saying in his mind, hey, I think I'm a starter. I think there's a lot of – like Don Chapman. Don Chapman started, 4 or 5 games as a true freshman. So now Don Chapman carries himself like a starter. And so I think, Miles Wolfolk obviously is a veteran. I tease him all the time. It's like he's 32 years old on the last year of his contract, trying to get one more year, trying to get the organization to up him one more year. But, Wolf's done a really good job as a leader. So I think it's safety, those 3. And then, Trey Morrison's playing everywhere. Trey Morrison, my goal is to have a series where he plays nickel, safety, and corner. So that's my goal. And I think, he's the kid that I think we've been impressed with the most. Like, a kid, gets nicked up, we're holding whatever, like, a strained groin or something like that, and he's going to miss a day. Okay, Trey, now you go play this. And with the first group. And so, I think it's safety. Those 4 kids have done a really good job. And then I think Giovanni Biggers has improved a ton, to where, he could go in the game. And again, I think it's, you improve the most from your first year to your second year. So I think the improvement you've seen out of Don and out of Cam and out of Gio has been huge. And then at corner, we knew Kyler was really talented. So I think, adding him to the mix has helped. But, the kid who's impressed me the most in the entire secondary is Storm Duck. I feel like he can play for about anybody. I think he's going to be an NFL football player. So, to have a kid like that, and again, right, there's a freshman who took his lumps a little bit. Now he's a sophomore, and he can play either of the corners and do a really good job. Play a lot of different techniques. I think if you ask the offensive guys, he's probably the guy they talk about the most. Patrice has come back really well from the injury. You always worry about a corner when he has an injury like that. I think he's done a really nice job. So, I mean, I think, Kyler and Storm and Patrice have done a really good job. And then, obviously we got a really talented young kid who should be, when Ross Martin was a senior at Grimsley, he was just worried about what was for lunch that day. Tony Grimes is out here playing man-to-man with De'Ami Brown. So, he's a really talented kid. And, so that room, Obig Buna's improved a ton. There's another freshman who, played special teams, got thrown out of the club a few times, and he's really improved. So, it's really great to come out here and not be like, oh, Lord, he's in, that's made it a lot better. So I think it is a strength. I think the depth is a strength. And I think, with depth like that competition, iron sharpens iron. And I'm excited to see those kids play.
And you mentioned Wolf. What does he bring? He's been through a lot of up and downs in his career. Kind of what does he bring as a leader for that group? Well,
I think they really respect him, for everything, right? For how he's battled back from injuries, for his toughness. He is like I talk all the time about energy. He is a force multiplier, his energy. And so when he's out there, the rest of the defense functions better. I can yell at Wolf instead of yelling at the entire group. He appreciates that role. So, I mean, I think he's kind of the unquestioned veteran leader. I think he brings everything to that group, and Wolf's done a great job because we haven't given him a ton of reps. We're being very cautious about how much we're asking him to do, to get him ready. And I think he understands that, and it's going to be the same way in a game. I don't expect Wolf to play, Miles Dorn played 800 snaps last year. I don't think anyone's going to be in that role. I hope not. And so I think Wolf's done a really good job of appreciating hey, I'm going to go in with this group and be a leader. Then the next day I'm going to be with this group and be a leader. And I'm excited to see him, continue to do that. My goal is for him to play all 12. That's my goal.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go over to David Hale.
Hey, Jay, I'm just curious, as you've evaluated how the defensive front as a whole has done in terms of getting pressure on the QB. I know it can be a little bit of a trickier thing when you're not actually tackling QBs, but do you feel like that group as a whole has made strides from last year? And where do you see sort of the strengths being on that defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, so when I look at the front, I kind of look at the position coach, Javon DeWitt coaches, which we call outside backers, which are Taman and Tyrone and Desmond Evans and Chris Collins and Kamen Rucker, that group. And then I look at, Tim Cross's group, which I just talked about with Ray and Tamari and those guys. So, I think we have, with the exception of Jason, who got drafted, I think that group is a better pass rush group. I think Javon's done a really good job with the outside kids. I don't know if there's an elite pass rusher out there, but very few people have those anymore. They're hard to find. I think we have a couple of young guys that can become that. I think we have kids that understand how to rush the passer better, how to work as a unit better. I think that's been our big kind of focus with them is we can't just rely on one guy, working off each other. And then I think we've got with Chaz and Jeremiah some really good, blitz options, to generate pressure and drop those guys into coverage. And I think that's been part of our MO since we got here. So, I really think our outside linebackers are going to be able to win on one-on-ones if we can get them in those situations.
All right, let's move to Ross Martin. Ross, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, could you explain the difference between the defensive end and the defensive tackle in your 3-4?
Sure. The tackle is going to always be a guy in Tim Cross's room. That's a guy that's a big body, where the D end can be in Javon's room or in Tim's room, depending on what package is in, right? So we call it the end, right, for all 11 defenders, right? So they know that the D end does this in this call. And then, Tim Cross, when he to his guys, hey, if you're playing end, you do this, and Javon does the same, right? And then what happens, Ross, is then based on what personnel packages in the game, certain calls fit certain packages better. So an example would be if we were dropping the end into coverage, we would rather that be Taman or Hopper or a guy like that instead of Jalil Taylor, right? So Jalil still knows that he does that job, but I try really hard not to ask him. And that's kind of what goes into the multiplicity of the defense, right? Is that you can put different guys in positions and do the same job, but ask them to do it a different way because of, their skill set.
And then a few personnel notes. Who's kind of playing behind Tamari is kind of that, outside guy.
Yeah, I'd say it's Zach.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zach Gill. I think, I think Miles Murphy's playing out there some. I think Kevin Hester, is playing both of them, and he's going to be really good. I think he's just still learning a little bit. But I'd say, primarily it's Zach Gill behind Tamari right now.
And then the younger guys, you mentioned Miles Murphy. What about, are guys like AJ Beatty, Clyde Pender, where are they right now kind of in the
I think AJ's done a nice job. He needs to get stronger, which we kind of knew when we signed him. He was a longer, leaner body for that position, but we wanted to get a guy like him. And I think AJ's got some ability for sure. And I think he needs a year with Hess. I expect him to kind of take the kind of same trajectory that Christian Varner and Kevin Hester took, a year with Brian Hess and getting stronger. Clyde Pender, he's had some bad luck. He broke his finger first day, and hard to play D-line with a broken finger. But he's back he's kind of out of a club. I know some pictures were out of him in a club. I didn't like those pictures, but he's kind of back now with using his hands, and he's got a lot of ability. He's going to come along too. So I think all four of those, obviously, KJ hasn't been practicing, but the other three guys, are doing a really nice job.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Next up is Brendan Marks.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for taking the time. Not to harp on the pass rush or anything, but Mac has mentioned a couple of times now the cross-training of different guys, and specifically one that he had pointed to past couple of weeks has been Chaz, trying to get him potentially in some pass rushing situations. I'm just wondering, have you guys toyed with the idea of dropping him more into coverage as well, or what sort of different schematic things can you do with him to best utilize his talents?
Yeah, I mean, we are going to use him in about every way you can. So, we have like Matt kind of let the cat out of the bag with him playing outside backer a little bit. But, so like, yeah, we're going to put him all over, because what we kind of felt like at the end last year was people were like, hey, look, block the down guys and then block 21. And so we've done some stuff to move him around, but that makes it a little bit more difficult. And then, Chaz is phenomenal in coverage. So, if we do feel like they're trying to protect against, a potential blitz or a potential, deal where he's, aligned as a rusher, and then we drop him into coverage, that's a win for us, right? So, yeah, we plan on using him in a number of different ways.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Jacob Turner, you're up next.
Hey, Jay. You talked a lot about the defensive line, obviously, today. If you guys were to play Syracuse tomorrow, how many of those guys would you feel extremely comfortable with throwing out there in like a real game-like situation?
Like to play some snaps or play like to play some snaps, I'd say probably 6. Like some of the younger guys, we're going to ask them to do very specific roles, Jacob, until they kind of get a better handle and everything. I think that's the situation we're in right now. That makes it a lot better for us. We're going to ask Miles Murphy to do very specific things, and he does those things really well right now. And then Tim Cross every week is going to get him to learn more and more of it to where he can handle the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, obviously Ray, Jalil, Tamari, Zach Gill, Kevin Hester, Zach Gill. I think I said Zach twice.
You did. It's all good.
Varner.
Varner. I mean, I think all those guys are going to, potentially play some. It just depends on how the game's going and what the offense is doing a little bit too. But I think the lion's share will come from, Tamari, Jalil, Ray, and Zach. And I think those other guys will be in situations to do what they do really well right now as young guys.
One more question for you, Jay. Eugene Asante, I know Max talked a lot about him over the past couple of weeks. Some of the players have as well. How have you seen him develop from this time last year in particular?
So like last year he would flash and you'd be like, wow, he's going to be a really good player, but then he would like go the wrong way. And and so now like I see I think Eugene Asante is one of the hard thing for Eugene Asante is he plays behind Chaz primarily. So like the challenge for me is to get Eugene in the game and not take Chaz out, right? That becomes part of our deal. So I think Eugene Asante is a tremendous player, and the work he put in, like probably 10 times during the quarantine, Eugene Asante would text me, all right, coach, give me 10 calls to run. And he would be out in a field or in his hallway at home, and he would be working through formations and reads. I mean, he has put a tremendous amount of effort in, and it shows. So now you've got a kid who's very knowledgeable, who's very confident with what he's doing, who's got a ton of ability. And he is we have to play him some. We have to.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's move over to Brian Keys. Brian, go ahead.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for talking to us. On the topic of sort of cross training and making sure you have enough guys for every position, has that changed what you're trying to do on the defense, or made you alter some schemes if you're thinking of you might be having less experienced guys out there?
So I think it's really two things. I think number one, when you've got a really talented young kid, right? He might not be able to handle the whole thing, right? He might not be able to have call A to Z. But if you give him call A, B, and C, and he can do those three really, really well, well then put him in a situation where those are going to be the calls that he runs, and so there's that piece of it. Right. The second piece of it, I think, is you have to be, kind of stick your head in the sand not to realize what's going on out there in the world, right? And so like Coach Brown or Luke Ross, our trainer, could come in and tell me on a Wednesday, hey, this kid's not going to be able to play because of a positive test or whatever, right? So all of a sudden now I better be able to go to a different group of guys if we lose a couple guys. And so that's part of it too. So I think all those things. And then the third thing is, it creates multiplicity without creating conflict on our kids, because they don't necessarily have to know all these calls. So what happens is the offense sees a bunch of calls, and obviously, we've got guys like, Chaz and Jeremiah and Storm Duck and Tamon Fox and Jalil Taylor that can handle any call we run, right? So those guys are in, and then you supplement them with younger kids that are going to play in these 2 or 3 calls, and it creates a lot of multiplicity in your defense.
And then just a quick follow-up. I know you mentioned Chaz moving around a little bit, but is there anyone else you expect to be swapping around?
I mean, we moved Tamon around a lot already, so I would think that'll continue. I think we moved Trey Morrison around a lot. So I think those 3 guys. And then I think we got a freshman, Jaquarius Conley, who I think is going to be really, really good player. So I think we'll probably get him in some situations to do some stuff too. But, and here's the thing: you move Chaz, right? Then somebody else moves too, all right? So it's the function of all of them moving, and a lot of it, right, is just trying to create different pass rush looks.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we're going to swing back over to Ross. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, it kind of leads into my question about Jaquarius Conley. What can you tell us about him, what he's done, what he's been so impressive so far, and how do you think you're going to use him? Because he's kind of a unique player with his position and skill set.
So I think eventually he's going to primarily be a safety. Safety is the hardest position in the defense. So I think early on we realized that he needed to be in a role where he could play right now, because I think he is really talented, Ross. So we're primarily playing him in nickel, a little bit of safety in certain personnel packages. But I've heard the other kids talk about it. I've heard everybody talk about him. He is a really talented kid, right? So. He can do a lot. So I think he'll probably primarily be at nickel, but I think as the season progresses, you'll see him do a lot.
Yeah, and then 3 other true freshmen. I mean, briefly, like Tony Grimes, a big name, and then Kamen Rucker and Des Evans have both kind of – Max talked about them a little bit. Could you kind of run through each 3 and kind of what they've done and how you see them maybe playing in this season?
Yeah, Tony's awesome. He gets here like next day goes to practice. He should be high school, but he's really smart. He's really prepared well by his high school coaches. So he's done great. I think the biggest thing with Tony is just the size of the people compared to who he's used to being involved with. But he's going to be really good. I'm really glad he's here. I think the ceiling for him is the roof, right? Is that what Michael Jordan said, right? There's no telling how good a player he can be. Kamen Rucker is dynamite. I'd say of all the freshmen, he's probably going to play the most. So I think Kamen Rucker can play a lot of things. There's another kid we're going to use him in a lot of different ways. He is a really, really talented kid. And then I think Desmond Evans, every day does something where you're like, yeah, I think he's still got to get a little bit stronger, because he's so long. But there's times where he is an absolute dominant football player. And, I think those two, talking about Rucker and Evans, a year or two from now, like, holy moly, we could have a really good situation.
I appreciate your time and your candor.
Always, friends.
All right, we're going to finish up today. Greg Barnes, you're our last question. Please go ahead.
Jay, this time a month ago, you had no idea that you were going to be playing Syracuse or Charlotte. Just curious, the challenge and kind of trying to scout those teams while also having training camp going on.
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of had some stuff going on Syracuse, Greg, because when we got the list of potential teams, right, we knew we were going to play this 10 teams. At that point, I kind of had my guys start working on, like, okay, who are the teams we don't know anything about, right? And Syracuse was one of them. Boston College, we had on the schedule, but they were later. We weren't that concerned about, like, pregame, preseason work on them. And then we said we might as well get some work on them too. So, yeah, it's been a challenge. I think I got a lot of respect for Syracuse, watching them on film. So we're lucky, I think, that our offense gives us a lot of the same kind of conflicts they try to give you. So that part's been a little bit easier for us, but it's certainly going to be a challenge. I mean, yeah, it's unique. I mean, UNC Charlotte, I mean, I'd never seen their offense at all, so it was like, okay, let's get some film and watch it. And, Will Healy played for me when I was at Richmond, and great dude. So I look forward to that game too.
Thanks, Jay.
Yep.
All right, Coach. Thanks for your time today. We're out of questions. So,
hey, Mark, real quick, it's my mom's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Go.
All right.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.